My dad married my stepmother 3 months ago, and I feel like it made my life significantly harder and less pleasant. They moved in with us, and for the indefinite future this situation will not change. We have a 3-bedroom house, and before they moved in, my dad and I had our rooms, both with bathrooms. And there was a smaller room which was a study for my dad. After they moved in, Jenny, 16, turning 17 next month, got my room. And I had to share the smaller room with 11-year-old Tom and 10-year-old Mike. All my books, my telescope, my stuff are packed and in the basement now since there's no space anymore. This made me real angry, but my dad told me that I have to be a team player, and this is what him and his wife agreed on. Jenny treats me like shit. She sometimes acts as if I'm not there at all, and sometimes is super aggressive and hostile towards me. The other I asked Tom to stop going through my things, and she became so angry that I have no right to order her brother around. She told me to get it in my thick skull that I'm not their big brother to tell them what to do, even though all I asked was for them to stop going through my things. She said it's best if I don't talk to them at all, since that way they will get less influence from a weirdo like me. What I don't get is that if she's so concerned that I might leave a bad influence on Tom and Mike, why doesn't she take them into her room? Tom and Mike don't respect any boundaries. They're always through my stuff. I have a watch which was a gift from my mother. She died of cancer, and they took it from my drawer and lost it. I found it weeks later in the basement with its front glass broken. Before they moved in, I used to get a $100 allowance every month. Now Jenny gets $75, I get $35, and Tom and Mike each get $30. I had an Xbox, but these kids broke it down. I used to spend a lot of time with my dad. He used to come see me play basketball almost every week. He hasn't done it even once in the past 3 months since he's always working overtime. We eat out once a week, and none of them in these 3 months have been to any of my favorite places, but Jenny, Tom and Mike have each chosen their favorites more than once. I complained about all of it to my father last week, and he told me that family is all about sacrifices, and I have to make mine. Haven't I made enough sacrifices already? I feel like I'm the only one making sacrifices. I looked forward to them moving in here, but I now feel like an outsider at home. It's not my home anymore. Life has become very difficult for me. I spend as much time as I can outside because inside is so frustrating, but this is causing problems as well. My dad keeps telling me that not being around means I'm not accepting them as part of the family, while in reality it's the opposite. So I get grounded for not being around, and being around is horrible. I don't want to live here anymore, but I'm only 15 and can't move out. I have nobody else who can take me in. I can't stay here for 3 more years. I'll go crazy. I often fantasize about running away at night, but I know that's also as horrible, if not even more. My husband and I, both in our early 30s, have been together for over a decade and made the decision to not have kids. I like kids, I have nieces and nephews, we just don't want them for our own reasons. He had a vasectomy, which only a few people know about. Our families are aware we don't want kids, as they've asked this before during different major life events, our wedding for instance. We recently bought a 3-bedroom home with a nice yard in a nice area. Excited to show our new home to family and friends, major upgrade to our previous home, we hosted a housewarming. During the party, one of my sibling-in-laws, Alex, made a few indirect comments about all this space. And kids would love it in our house, etc. Eventually they asked point blank when we were having kids. I made a light-hearted joke about it, which is my go-to for this question. Oh, well, I like sushi too much to have to give it up for a pregnancy. Plus not drinking for pregnancy and breastfeeding? No thanks. I tried to make it very light-hearted and laugh it off. Most people just laughed along. That seemed to anger Alex, and I was told children are a joy, and a good mother puts her kids before everything else. I agreed, children are a joy, I like spending time with the nieces and nephews. And obviously I can't be a good mom if I chose sushi over kids, so I just won't be a mom, paraphrased. Still trying to brush it off in a gentle way, because I'm not trying to start a fight by telling them to stop asking in front of everyone, because I know my tone will be seen as rude and abrasive. We move on. But Alex is still annoyed and making little comments in their group about how flippant I am about it, and how when it finally happens, then I'll understand. My husband heard this and jokingly said, well, if she gets pregnant, that'll be a problem for the divorce lawyers. That seemed to piss them off more, but they stopped. With holidays coming up, we have not been invited to Alex's usual Halloween bonfire. When husband spoke to his parents, they told him Alex was annoyed we were so careless and callous about our child-free status and to say what we did, and they realized we had taken permanent steps to ensure we never had kids. That we know they had to do if to have kids, etc. And we are AHs to just not care. I feel bad because they did do if and lots of fertility treatments to have their kids. And even then they still had a few miscarriages. I can't imagine wanting kids and struggling to have them and then deal with miscarriages. But at the same time, I'm so tired of justifying living my life how I want. I feel terrible my joke was taken the way it was and that I hurt my ILs. I truly never meant for that to happen. After the bonfire this weekend, we will be reaching out to have a heart-to-heart, if they'll accept it. Either way, I'll be apologizing for hurting their feelings, let them know I love their kids and them. But I will also be firmly putting down any further attempts to discuss our child-free status, if the conversation is about changing our minds. I have not told them our reasons for being child-free, so I think perhaps if they are willing to listen, I'll explain them and hopefully the conversation can be constructive. Almost all the marriages in my family have been arranged marriages. My mom's marriage to my bio dad was an arranged marriage, but it ended up in a messy divorce and him completely abandoning us before I was even born. My mom had a love marriage the second time, despite the disapproval of her family, and has been much happier with my stepdad than she probably would have ever been with my bio dad. Because of this, my mom has always been very adamant that she would not try to force us, my siblings and I, into arranged marriages despite what the rest of our family thought. I've been with my fiancé for 3 years now. We got engaged 2 months ago. He's met my parents and siblings, but as far as the majority of my extended family were concerned, I was single until 2 months ago. Early last year, my fiancé dropped me off home after work one day and my uncle was there. My uncle is the oldest sibling my mom has, so he's seen as the head of the family. He thinks he has a say in what the rest of us do. It was obvious my uncle was pissed, and he ended up grilling my fiancé, and I assume he met his standards. A lot of arranged marriages are about what both families can gain from one another, so he told my mom to get us married quickly. He wanted to make it look like we had an arranged marriage before the rest of our family found out. My mom ignored him and told us to keep dating if it's what we wanted. Over the past year, he's mentioned me getting married to my mom every single time he's spoken to her. Apparently, my uncle assumed just because he'd given the order that we were going to get married soon. He told my cousin, his daughter, that I had agreed to an arranged marriage, and because I had and she was older, she should agree to the match he'd found her. My cousin never mentioned this to me, but she did agree to marry the man my uncle found for her. They got married late last year. They haven't had a good marriage and my cousin is very unhappy. Her husband is incredibly controlling and hardly ever lets her go anywhere without him or a member of his family. Last week, she was over at my house when my fiancé came over to drop some of the clothes I'd left at his place over. When I told my family about my engagement, they all assumed it was an arranged marriage and I didn't bother clarifying because it really isn't anyone's business. You don't tend to do sleepovers if you're having an arranged marriage, so my cousin knew immediately it wasn't what she assumed. She started asking me questions about my relationship and I answered honestly. She got really angry at me and kept demanding to know why I didn't tell her about him. The thing is, I'm very close to this cousin, but I also know how our family is about dating and I didn't want my male cousins trying to strong-arm my fiancé. They've jokingly threatened this before. She pretty much blamed me for her arranged marriage and said she only agreed because she thought I was going to have one too, and if I had told her I had a boyfriend, she would have had the courage to stand up to her family. She hasn't spoken to me since. I do feel bad for her. I know how unhappy she is, but if she had mentioned what my uncle told her earlier, I would have clarified. I don't want this to be the end of our relationship, but I don't know what I can do to fix this. I've been married to my wife for 10 years and we're a mixed race couple. I'm Asian and she's Caucasian. I've gotten along with her family, MIL, BIL, SIL, but I always felt like her father-in-law and other sister-in-law, Sarah, never liked me. I'm a professionally trained chef with 15+ years of experience and I work at a high-end Chinese restaurant. a spin-off of a popular one in Beijing, in a large US city. My crew and I have won several awards, and I've been explicitly told I'll be the next executive chef. Sarah is also a professionally trained chef and works at a popular upscale French restaurant in the city. She constantly brags about it and, no joke, compares herself out loud to Ramsay and Bourdain. Whenever I'm at my mother-in-law and FIL's house and helping out in the kitchen, Sarah is always criticizing everything I do. Whether it's chopping, braising, marinating, etc., she always butts in with comments like, I think you should actually do X like this. I've been patient for my wife and sidestepping those comments, saying things like, thanks, but I think I'll stick to the way I do it. Things came to a head 2 weeks ago when my wife, MIL, and I were in her parents' kitchen prepping dinner for my MIL's birthday. We were running a bit behind, so things were heated, which I kind of like because it reminded me of work. And that's when Sarah walked in. She took one look at what I was doing, scoffed, and said something like, oh wow, okay, so that's not the right way of doing things. It hit a nerve, and I pretty sternly told her to stop criticizing my cooking and that I'm also a chef like her. She laughed and said making kung pao chicken at some Chinese restaurant doesn't count. The kitchen went silent, father-in-law snorted / chuckled, and my mother-in-law yelled, Sarah, what is wrong with you? I stopped what I was doing, swore at her and called her a racist piece of shit. Apologized to my mother-in-law for not being able to stay, and left for home with my wife. Apparently this caused a massive fight after we left, with my MIL / BIL / other sister-in-law taking my side and my FIL / Sarah saying, it was a joke but kind of true and that I was being too sensitive. The extended family somehow got wind of this and now everyone is arguing and taking sides. With my wife even getting texts from some her cousins apologizing for Sarah's behavior. Despite being on my side, my wife is begging me to apologize so that the fighting will stop, but I refuse to because Sarah and her blatant racism. I'm a chef working at upscale Chinese resto, my sister-in-law is a chef at upscale French resto. She's critical of my cooking skills and has now called it making kung pao chicken at a Chinese restaurant. Family at war, wife begging me to apologize. My wife has also informed me that now Sarah may be in trouble at work and she's blaming me for it. Apparently one of her co-workers heard her rant about what happened and reported it to management. So it looks like one of my wife's cousins found this post and put it on Sarah's Facebook wall going, this is you, right? Her FB friends are starting to comment with things like, if this is you Sarah then I'm disappointed. I think Sarah's still at work, shit might be hitting the fan soon and now my wife is pissed too. My wife got a call from SIL. From wife's paraphrasing. Sarah started screaming / crying at her the moment my wife picked up and said that she just got demoted because of her Asian slur husband. Apparently some of her co-workers have her on FB and showed the post to management, which combined with her earlier rant, double whammied her back to being a line cook and now she might get fired. My wife solidly on my side after taking the verbal abuse from Sarah.